Is everyone ready? All right. Good afternoon. I called you together today to discuss the results of several internal affairs investigations and criminal investigations conducted by the Baton Rouge Police Department. Before we share the specifics on those investigative efforts, I want to acknowledge the Baton Rouge police officers who protect and serve our citizens every day. They serve this community with dignity and honor, and I thank them for their public service. It's because of the good cops that we are able to hold these few who don't deserve to wear that badge accountable. I've always been very clear that the Baton Rouge Police Department, under our leadership, will operate with 21st century policing standards, and that's professionalism, transparency, and accountability. Over the past few months, we've received numerous requests from media outlets, public records requests, as well as requests for comments concerning several of the investigations we're going to talk about today. I recognize our current environment where there's a public interest in these matters, and I understand your desire to want to know right now, but we have to get it right. And in order to get it right, sometimes we can't give you all the information right now. We have to get it right. And investigations take time. These investigations recently concluded, and in alignment with our transparency practices, we wanted to inform the public of our findings. What you will hear today is the fulfillment of those standards. As an organization, we have made the appropriate changes necessary to work in an ever-changing environment in policing in America. And our citizens and our officers deserve nothing less. I will now turn it over to Deputy Chief Myron Daniels to share the details of the investigations initiated and carried out by Baton Rouge police officers. Deputy Chief Daniels.
Thank you. Good evening, all. As the Chief stated, my name is Deputy Chief Myron Daniels, and I am the Chief of Staff for the Baton Rouge Police Department. I am going to go over a brief overview, or present a brief overview of several cases that resulted in us being here today. The first is a case that actually started on April 25th of 2022. At that time, the department was notified by a supervising officer that former BRPD Corporal Billy Mattingly was arrested by the Denham Springs Police Department. The investigation revealed that on February the 16th of this year, a Walmart employee observed then Corporal Mattingly placing stickers for lower priced items on higher priced items and proceeding to the self-checkout scanner. He then scanned the swap barcodes and proceeded to exit the store. Once he passed all points of sale, he was confronted by a Walmart employee. Mr. Mattingly then left the store and was ultimately taken into custody by a Denham Springs police officer on a nearby street. At the conclusion of the administrative investigation, a disciplinary hearing was held last week, specifically August the 24th, and the 11-year veteran of the Baton Rouge Police Department was terminated. As we continue to speak on arrest, on today, Officer Wade Hill was arrested by detectives of the Baton Rouge Police Department's Violent Crimes Unit on the following charges: second-degree kidnapping, misdemeanor sexual battery, obscenity, and malfeasance in office. Officer Hill has been with the department since December 7th, 2020, and he is currently assigned to the 3rd District Precinct of the Uniform Patrol Division. Since learning of this incident, he has been and will remain on administrative leave until a disciplinary hearing can be convened. The circumstances of following this arrest are as follows. On July the 11th of this year, the Internal Affairs Division was contacted by a female victim in reference to this case. After the initial review, we were briefed on some concerns and a criminal investigation was launched. The investigation revealed that on July 8th, Officer Hill was working in the extra duty detail and did respond to a complaint of trespassing at a local apartment complex. Upon arrival, at the request of the apartment manager, Officer Hill did contact the victim. She was eventually handcuffed and secured in the backseat of the officer's police cruiser. Officer Hill then drove the victim from the apartment complex to his residence. There, the still handcuffed victim was transferred from the marked police cruiser to Mr. Hill's personal vehicle. He then transported the handcuffed victim to several locations in his personal vehicle before finally coming to a location of an apartment complex on Highland Road. It was at that time the victim did note that throughout the transport she was touched on her buttocks and several sexual comments made toward her. Once at this apartment complex, Officer Hill removed the handcuffs and the two walked to an empty apartment, which was later determined to be assigned to Mr. Hill. While in the apartment, the victim stated that Mr. Hill masturbated in front of her before the two left the residence. The victim requested and was dropped off at a business on Highland Road where she was able to contact someone to pick her up. The investigators in this case was able to obtain video surveillance, body-worn camera footage, GPS data, and other records to corroborate the victim's allegations. A warrant for Mr. Hill's arrest was secured, and he has been booked into the parish prison on those charges. On today as well, a second arrest was made. It involved a former BRPD officer, one Richmond Barrow. Detectives of the Baton Rouge Police Department booked Mr. Barrow on the following charges: obstruction of justice and malfeasance in office. Mr. Barrow joined the Baton Rouge Police Department on January 8th of 2018 and spent the last 4.5 years assigned to the Uniform Patrol Division. The circumstances that led to his arrest are as follows. In June of this year, allegations were brought forth that the then officer had been leaking confidential and law enforcement sensitive information to individuals involved in criminal activity. Immediately, criminal and administrative investigations were launched, and Mr. Barrow was placed on administrative leave. During the course of the investigation, Mr. Barrow was alleged to have allowed non-law enforcement personnel to view body-worn camera footage from previous police encounters, to have shared investigative and surveillance reports with a subject arrested in a felony case, photographed a police database system that contained sensitive information regarding a shooting and shared it with friends via group text, offered to inform a subject who was under investigation for drug distribution of the identity of the confidential informant used in the case for the exchange of money. He's alleged to have photographed an arrestee while in police custody and shared the photo again with family and friends through a text thread, and alerted subjects on several high-risk warrants targeting suspected drug dealing. Our investigators were able to locate evidence to substantiate the aforementioned charges. Some of the evidence included seizure of cell phones, forensic data analysis, personal records, and other testimony. A warrant was secured for the arrest of Mr. Barrow, and he was in fact transported and booked into the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. For clarity, as of yesterday, Mr. Barrow was on leave pending the outcome of an administrative investigation. However, Richmond Barrow submitted his letter of resignation to end his employment with the Baton Rouge Police Department just hours before his Laudermill hearing, which was scheduled for 1 p.m. on that date. In the spirit of transparency, the investigation of Mr. Barrow was not the only former BRPD officer investigated for leaking confidential and law enforcement sensitive information. This second investigation of this type occurred within the last few months as well. In that case, former BRPD Sergeant John Dothier used a departmental issue computer to access a reporting database to research a member serving on the Municipal Fire and Police Civil Service Board. Within 2 to 3 days of accessing those files, negative, inaccurate, public writings began to appear, attacking the character and reputation of the appointed citizen. During the course of this investigation, the investigator became even more concerned after learning of communications between the former officer and another person within the criminal justice system. When it was discovered that the other person provided Mr. Dothier access to a non-departmental database, Internal Affairs attempted to determine the reasons access was granted, as well as the information searched. We were much taken aback to learn that the requested audit was unable to be provided. We are in the final stages of completing this investigation, but what is even more concerning is the possibility that others who are in respected influential positions may have conspired in the process. Just as Mr. Barrow did in his case, John Dothier also, while on administrative leave, retired prior to the completion of the internal investigation and a Laudermill hearing. To the citizens of Baton Rouge, public trust is something that is paramount to our success as a police department as well as a city. Trust is a critical component for any relationship. The leadership of this department is committed to trust and accountability. The actions taken today are not easy, but they were necessary. It should also be a reminder that we have consistently held our own accountable, to include not just discipline and terminations, but we have also arrested in cases that were warranted. In closing, the Baton Rouge Police Department consists of criminal justice professionals who have proven themselves as dedicated public servants. Our department supports the community, and this community has and continues to support us. As I always say, we are one. Chief.
Thank you, Myron.
Yes.
What you just heard should upset you. Former officers behaving in such a way, committing crimes, is a violation of the public's trust. It erodes the faith of our community, and that's why we must take corrective action and restore that trust. And that's what we have done. BRPD officers initiated these investigations, worked through the criminal process, the administrative process, and finally brought these men to justice. That's accountability, and we are committed to it. No one is above the law. And those who commit crimes should be held accountable, no matter who you are. I will end by thanking the more than 750 Baton Rouge Police Department personnel. And I also want to thank law enforcement officers, local, state, and federal, all across America, who serve the communities proudly every single day with selfless service, professionalism, and dignity. It's because of them that we're able to bring individuals like this to justice. And I can promise our citizens that we will never stop striving for excellence and professionalism. And I'm proud of the men and women of the Baton Rouge Police Department. And it's an honor being their chief. We have so much work to do. But I can assure you that we will continue to make you proud to call us your police department. We'll take questions now.
Chief, WBRD learned moments ago the alleged drug dealer that blew the whistle on Officer Barrow had his bond significantly reduced today. Was that part of the deal you guys worked out?
I'm not going to comment on any ongoing investigations concerning that.
Chief, were there any other pending cases that did not result in any arrest?
I'll let Deputy Chief Daniels answer that.
Unfortunately, there were additional cases. Those cases did not, particularly one, did not result in an arrest. The allegation was brought forth by a very concerned law enforcement officer informing the Baton Rouge Police Department that comments were made that if they were to see the chief visiting a certain social establishment, to call and notify him so that an arrest or traffic stop can be made on the chief. Alarming is the only way that I can tell you. Unfortunately, this would not even be the first time that this type of action has been brought to us by very concerned citizens, police wives, as well as other law enforcement officers. But just to think that someone would purposely target anyone, it should by itself tear you up on the inside.
Is there a reason why exactly an arrest wasn't made for that threat that was made on Chief Hall?
Absolutely. The saving grace for that person who attempted to commit that very unethical practice was the officers who did not adhere to the request. We have very good police officers who do everything they can the right way. And they did not fall into that, that request to attempt to arrest the chief if he was seen out at a certain establishment.
Can I just run through the status of the various officers real quick? So Mattingly has been terminated, is that correct?
Yes, sir. He was terminated last week.
And Wade Hill, what's his status again?
Wade Hill is still employed with the Baton Rouge Police Department. There is what's called due process. As soon as a discipline hearing can be convened, we will take up that matter at that time.
And Barrow has resigned.
Yes, sir.
And John Dothie is retired.
Yes, sir. That's right.
What was the decision? What was the process for deciding, that Hill would remain on admin leave while an officer like Mattingly is fired? Like, what are the differences that y'all take into account there?
Actually, exactly what we described, that Laudermill hearing that's afforded to officers has to occur. Mattingly actually had his Laudermill hearing. We haven't convened a board yet for Officer Hill at this time.
For clarification, for the person that made the threat on Chief Paul, was that person a city official or just a regular person?
It is and was now retired Sergeant John Dothier.
Richmond Barrow, can you say how much time he's looking at?
That would be a question that probably would be best pointed to the courts.
Is, the investigation into Dorothea, is that an administrative one or a criminal one?
It was an internal investigation, but we did seek or involve our federal partners in that process as well.
Is that on investigating the materials that he reviewed on the department laptop or on the threat that you were just alluded to?
That was on the threat.
Okay. And that didn't yield any arrests?
No, like I said, those officers did the right thing.
And is the probe into Dothier, is any aspect of that still active considering he's retired?
Well, I can tell you, regardless of a person's status with the Baton Rouge Police Department, it is our policy that we will conclude our internal investigations. There are a lot more things that come from it other than possible discipline for a particular subject. It's a great tool for us to analyze our own practices as well as maybe harden some things that we have in place.
Are
Yes,
you all
sir.
considering any changes that can prevent this from happening again, so where you all are up at the podium talking about the same issue?
As I said, when the actual process is completed, we will do an evaluation and make a determination at that time.
Chief Paul, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
If you guys find out any more of your officers are involved in illegal activity, can we expect more conferences like this?
So our hope is that won't happen again. You know, we've been very consistent since we have been put in these positions. We're only talking about a very few officers. And I think it's important to note that these cases are worked by Baton Rouge police officers. Nobody wants anyone around them who's going to make our profession look bad. You know, we talked about transparency, we talk about integrity, and our Baton Rouge police officers are demonstrating that every day. So we don't believe that that's the case. However, we have an obligation and a duty, if anything is presented to us, to investigate it. And look, I really hat goes off to the men and women of this police department. You know, most of the complaints that come in, we address it through coaching, mentoring, and training, counseling. It doesn't get to this level. And we're seeing that every day, right, where our police officers, our supervisors are holding each other accountable. And when we see officers who call the line, we are getting notified. And that's how we are able to initiate these type of investigations. So I'm proud of the men and women of this police department.
One
Yes, sir.
last question, please.
Are you worried about the perception of BRPD right now from the public, given this information you all have given out today?
No, I think it's about accountability. I hope what the public see is that we can hold each other accountable. I think what the public sees is that the Baton Rouge Police Department, when we receive the information, we investigate it. Our internal affairs commander is here. He's doing a great job of running our division. And I hope they see that we are in alignment with best practices that are around the country. And let me be clear. I hope they also know that those individuals that we arrested today don't represent us. They don't share the values. That's why they were held accountable. And I hope they see that they can continue to trust us and know that we can police ourselves as a police agency.
Mr. Daniels, I'm sorry, I kind of missed the details of the threat that you described earlier. Would you mind running over that one more time just so everyone is clear on what that was?
Yes. So a very concerned law enforcement officer brought it to our attention that there was communication that if then Sergeant Dothier, from then Sergeant Dothier, that if the chief was saw at a certain social establishment, that a call will be made to notify him of the chief's presence. That call was for him to show up and to pull the chief over, and what could only be understood as to effect arrest on the chief.
So this is while John Dothier was still an officer?
Yes, sir, it was.
Okay.
All right, y'all, we appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.